Just letting you know on that. All right. We're doing this series called Friends, Flings, and Relationship Things because we all have them. We all have our friends, our flings, our relationship things, and they've gone astray. They've gone wrong. Maybe we got some issues with them. And so we've been talking about that. And so we talked about it last week. And this week I had a plan of where I wanted to go. I wanted us to talk about the things we need to clothe ourselves, the things we need to put on. And Paul talks about that a lot in the New Testament. Clothe yourself with humility and gentleness and all these things. Now, that was kind of the direction, but it shifted after several conversations I had last week. I talked to several people last week, and they were talking about, but you don't understand what they did. Remember last week we talked about it's not my fault. Remember that's our thing, and that we all have our luggage we bring into the relationship, and what do you do that? But several people spoke to me and said, hey, you don't understand what they did. You don't understand. What do I do when they hurt me and they keep, how do I, and so that was kind of playing in my brain. And then Sunday afternoon, a small group I'm part of was reading a book called The Lord is My Shepherd by Harold Kushner, and it had this quote in it, and so I'll read it to us. It says, to love someone is to make yourself vulnerable. It means taking off the armor you habitually wear to protect yourself against the forces in the world that would hurt you. To love someone is to say to that person, being close to you is so important to me that I will give you the power to hurt me because I trust you not to use that power. Sometimes people do take advantage of another's vulnerability. Spouses and lovers who grow angry at each other, parents who abuse their children physically or verbally, children who find ways to hurt their parents by hurting themselves with drugs, alcohol, or by their choice of a career, I'll throw in college, or marriage partner. And of course, everyone you love will hurt you or be hurt by you when they die. That's just I love that phrase, that understanding there that we make ourselves vulnerable. To love is to make ourselves vulnerable, and that means we can get hurt. And our natural inclination is when we get hurt, we want to hurt back. And so this line, I think it's a good line. You can write it down. Hurt people, right? And last week we realized that all of us have fallen short. That's what we talked about. All of us have fallen short. All of us aren't where we need to be. All of us have this baggage, this issues going on within us. Nobody has it all together, including that perfect couple sitting right next to you or right in front of you. You're like, oh. I mean, one of the things I actually prayed about this morning with the group that I pray about before the service. We all come to church. Hey, how you doing? Fine. It's wonderful. My son's a state champion. Right? And yet, we all got stuff going on inside of us that we don't let anybody else. There is no such thing as the perfect couple, the perfect friendship, the perfect relationship. We all have baggage in there. And yet we're called to live in community, in these relationships, in these friendships, in these marriages. And even here at church, we're called to live together, and yet we hurt each other. So how do we? This is kind of going through my brain as I was thinking about last week's sermon. How do we, in our messed up state, with all of our baggage, with all of our issues, not cause more pain and hurt? John Ortberg wrote a book. It's called Everybody's Normal Till You Get to Know Them. It's a great line. And in it, he talks about how do porcupines get together, with all their barbs and all their quills. How do porcupines, right there, how do porcupines get into a relationship so they could procreate? And I thought, just how cool would it be to kind of show that, because they talk about this. Let me give you a heads up. Don't Google porcupine mating rituals. It is not going to go well for you or your computer in that area, all right? Just letting you know. But you think about it. You see these pictures of porcupines. How do porcupines, with their barbs and their quills and all that, how do they get together? Well, Ortberg talks about it in the book, and scientists and nature people, they talk about it, that they have this little dance almost that porcupines do, that where they begin to pull back their quills, they pull back their barbs, they stop doing the things that cause hurt so they can come together in a relationship. And I thought, man, how do we do that? Because I struggle with how do we get close to someone, because I haven't figured out how to do this yet. How do you get close to someone and live pain-free? How are you in a relationship? Because we all carry this personal arsenal to protect ourselves. I wrote it down this way: a personal arsenal to protect ourselves. We use weapons that have names like rejection and condemnation, resentment, arrogance, selfishness, envy, contempt. We use sarcasm, quick words, and cold shoulders, eye rolls, which that may be the worst. eye rolls, gossip, rumors, or just flat out ignoring people to cause pain and hurt. And even though we know this is going to happen, even though we know that loving somebody and opening ourselves up to somebody is going to get us hurt, and in turn, loving somebody and opening ourselves up to somebody, we're going to hurt them. Even though we know this, we still long to be in a relationship. We're driven and to live in this community. We long to have friendships. We long to have relationships with our neighbors. We want to go to church and sit next to people and go, hey, how you doing? Fine, how are you doing? Oh, yes. We long to have a good relationship with our partners and our spouses and our coworkers and our colleagues and our children. We still get married and we still have children even though we know this is going to cause us lots of pain and lots of hurt. And we constantly find ourselves hurting or getting hurt by those we want to be the closest to. And when we get hurt, there's a natural response. The psychologist will tell you this. When we get hurt, we do one of two things. Either we fight or we flee. And the fight or flight mentality. Dallas Willard, in one of his books, he says we attack or we withdraw. Both of them cause pain and hurt. We always think the attack's the one that really causes the pain and hurt, and it does. But also that ability to withdraw, that ability to pull back. I'm just talking, why do we do that? And if you think about it, every marriage, every human being on this planet, every relationship, marriage, family, work, friendships, church, have been hurt by this idea of fight or flight. When we come into conflict, we're going to do one of two things. We're going to attack or we're going to withdraw. For me, I remember when I was younger, there was a moment with my sister where I was mad at her because she wasn't doing any work because she's the youngest child. She got away with murder. I was bitter and upset about it. And I had worked, my parents came up with this idea that we were too cheap to pay for the yard to be sodded. So I sprigged the yard with St. Augustine grass. That was my 7th grade summer. My sister has not done a thing. I'm not kidding you. A thing. Until the video camera came out. And then she's right there with me, working hard. And I was livid and I was angry, and I climbed my butt up in a tree and pouted. So now there's a family video of my sister working hard, planting grass, and me whining in a tree. Because that's what we do in conflict. We either attack or we withdraw, because sometimes you just rip the branch off the tree and you go after your sister, which is a whole other video that we can't show at this time kind of thing, right? That's what happens, and we realize that. So you got to think there's got to be a better way. There is a way that we can be in a relationship with people and not cause pain and hurt, or at least limit the pain and hurt that we cause. And the problem is it's not easy, and it takes a lot of work. And it starts like we talked about last week. It starts with me, not you. It starts with us, not them. And that's the way of love. It's one of those key, it's loving deeply is how we do it. It's one of those core values we talk about here at First United, that we want to share love. We want to live our lives in such a way that people see something different about us, that we love, and we just kind of, the way we act and the way we interact with people, that there's this sense of love about us. Oh, there's something different about you. There's that way. And it's interesting to me, I got a text this week from one of our church members texting me saying, hey, do you know this pastor? And I went, no, I don't know who this pastor is. And they said, well, he's a Methodist pastor in the panhandle of Florida. I went, oh, well, they're not part of our conference. They're in Alabama anyhow. We don't really worry about them. We don't know them. And they went, oh, well, they just got arrested here in Daytona for trying to pick up a 14-year-old. Right? And we're shocked by that, and we should be. We should be. Isn't it interesting, though, we Christians, we get so shocked by the scandal of a moral failure, like a pastor trying to pick up a young child, or a pastor or somebody doing something with money or ethics like that, but none of us are shocked by the fact that Christians don't love each other. That should be the scandal that resonates in our hearts and drives us nuts. That we Christians, we who claim to follow the gospel of love, when we get in conflict, we bring out swords, cut, dash, swing, or we run away and hide. We get a new preacher. Oh, we ain't going there anymore. The church makes a new decision. Oh, I ain't doing that anymore. You know what she said about me in Sunday school class? I will not go back. And we look at the world and wonder, why don't they think we got something going on? Because we act just like them. It should shock us that we Christians don't act in this love, this way of love. And so thinking about that, there's this story, or not this story, but there's something Jesus says, and it's in the Gospel of Matthew. Let's read this together. If your brother or sister sins against you, Go and correct them when you are alone together. Let's just stop. What was that line? Please notice it does not say talk to your 4 friends. Okay, just keep reading. If they listen to you, then you won over your brother or sister. But if they won't listen, take with you 1 or 2 others, so that every word may be established by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. But if they still won't pay attention, report it to the church. If they won't pay attention even to the church, treat them as you would a Gentile and tax collector. Stop. All right. Okay. We always read this. Treat them as a Gentile and tax collector. Them bad sinners. Kick them out, get them out. Who did Jesus bring the closest to? It's the Gentiles and the tax collectors. See, we read this and we go, they won't listen to us. Get them out. And Jesus is like, no. Bring them closer. Are you nuts? That's what he's telling us to do. I mean, go read the Gospels today. They will tell you, when you begin to look and see the Gentiles and the tax collectors, that's who Jesus says, yeah, I'll come have dinner with you tonight, Zacchaeus. Sure, Matthew, why don't you come and follow me? Right? The woman, you send a bunch, you got 5 husbands, and this guy you're shacked up with now ain't your husband? That's all right. Living water's for you. Come on. We look at it going, see, I got a right to kick him out. Draw him closer. All right, let's read. I assure you, whatever you fasten on earth will be fastened in heaven, and whatever you loosen in earth will be loosened in heaven. And again, I assure you that if 2 of you agree on earth about anything you ask, then my Father who is in heaven will do it for you. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am with you. Man, it's just, I get that. And so just some thoughts. I know some of you Bible scholars out there are going to tell me, well, Jesus is not talking about personal conflict here, Scott. He's talking about conflict within the church, within the community of believers. Great, let's just do it here at this church and call it even. What if all of us in this room, whenever we have conflict with anybody else in this room, say we're going to follow that model? And I also think it works in your personal relationships. When you get hurt, you think about it, that's when most of our conflict occurs, is when we get hurt. When something doesn't go the way we want. When we don't get what we want or we don't get what we expect, when we get hurt, and then our response is that we're going to attack or we're going to withdraw. And so Jesus kind of begins to outline, there's a real simple method. He goes, when this happens, you go to them to make things right. That's it. So I wrote down some things that are going to help us work on this. 1, acknowledge the conflict. So when you acknowledge, there ain't nothing worse than going, oh, yeah, this. When I do this, I go up to Rebecca and I say something to Rebecca about, hey, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to, da-da-da. And Rebecca goes, oh, that's okay. That's a lie. It ain't okay. We do that. It's sort of like we say, hey, we're not going to acknowledge the conflict. We're not going to acknowledge the pain and the hurt. We're going to just press it down deep. No, be upbeat. Now, be kind and be gentle. Don't go, that's right. It hurt me so bad. I can't remember. Our response back. But acknowledge the conflict. Have that ability to say, I wronged and I was hurt. Acknowledge. It's forgiveness costs something. There's a pain and a hurt to it, because pain and hurt has been caused. So let's at least acknowledge, hey, there is some pain and hurt in this moment. Because when we refuse to face the facts, when we swallow our resentment and our anger, we're not making things healthy. When we carry on like everything is fine, we're not being truthful. And you can't have healing unless there's truth. So do that. But do it in love and then own your responsibility. Admit your own baggage you brought into the room. We talked those. Remember last week I had my pink polka dotted baggage I brought into the room. We all got that. Acknowledge there might be some responsibility that you own in this. And if you've done something wrong, take the step and go to them. Did you hear me? If you've done something wrong, take the step and go to them. And if they've done something wrong, take the step and go to them. No. They need to come to me. Right? They need to grovel to me. Hey, by the way, Aren't you glad God doesn't go, no, 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 y'all got to come to me? You ever notice that? God's response when humanity messes up is like, all right, I'll meet you where you are. Why aren't we supposed to do the same thing? You don't understand what they said, what they did. No. Go to them. Go to them. And remember when you go to them this. Anger often contains an element of self-righteousness. Anger often contains an element of holier-than-thou mentality. I am right, and your feeble little mind doesn't understand how brilliant I am. So let me explain to you. That's not what we're talking about, right? It's not about you being right. It's about us being right. You see the difference? It's not about me. It's about the relationship. So own your responsibility. And on that, you got to approach them. Don't avoid them. This is now, you got to go to them. Now, I understand you need a cooling off period. That can be very helpful. Then you need that cooling off period. Hey, let's just stop. Let's just breathe. A cooling off period, though, however, is not you going, well, let me just... And you know how we do that? We cool off by taking a walk and going over all the things that they said that was wrong, and just we re-justify it in our mind. Or we call our friend who we know is going to agree with us, and would you believe? And that's not cooling off. Cooling off is rerouting your thoughts. So you got to figure out what's going to work for you, what's going to reroute your thoughts. Maybe it's as simple as just when those thoughts come into your mind, as you begin to fester on it, you just go, stop. Focus on something different. That doesn't really work well for me, but you know what does work? Puppies. I'm like, no, man, puppies. You can't be grumpy with puppies around you, right? Cats, maybe, but puppies, no. All right? Or just sing. I realized this during Christmas carol. I told y'all about Christmas. I was in a bad mood going Christmas caroling. As soon as you start singing Christmas carols, it's hard to be grumpy. They talk about that in Elf. Sing loud and sing with cheer. And, it begins to reroute your thoughts. Or have you gone east from here? Go east. Just a little ways. There's this wonderful thing. It's called the beach. You cannot go to the beach and be mad, people. It's impossible. So do something, but then realize, don't avoid it. But before you go, you need to wrestle with two questions. These are the questions you kind of need to wrestle with. Why am I angry? You need to own that emotion, because there's always an underlying emotion flowing through you. There's a loss, there's a change, I'm hurt, right? Where's the anger coming from? And sometimes, a lot of times, you got to wrestle with, the anger's not him, it's this. And that begins to shift it. And then the second question is, what do I want? What do you want out of the situation? And if the answer is anything other than I want our relationship to be right, you ain't ready to go yet. If your answer is, what I want for them to realize I'm right. What I want for them is to make reparation. What I want, you're not ready yet. Go back to the beach. Take some puppies with you. All right? So begin to work on that. And then, no third parties in the beginning. All right, no, I know we like to do that. We're going to bring so-and-so in. They're going to work on my side, right? Jesus later on, he does that thing. He does say, he goes, if it's not working out, go to somebody. I realize, the problem with going to somebody? It's interesting. We always go to people. And I find if I'm frustrated with somebody, I'm going to go to somebody who agrees with me. And y'all like, oh, no, that's wrong. Y'all do the same thing. What would it be like if there's an issue, there's a conflict, and we go to 3 other people and bring them in? What if they don't agree with me? Now we got some issues, don't we? Is that what Jesus is saying? Jesus is not going to pick out 3 of your best friends and the 4 of y'all show up and explain to them why they're wrong. But pick 3 wise, perhaps, followers of Christ and bring them into the conversation. The last thing, and I think the key thing, when we've been hurt and we have that decision to attack or withdraw, to fight or to flee, you got to offer grace. Treat them the way you'd want to be treated. I always find it interesting how when I've messed up, I really expect everybody to give me a chance to make things right. And when I've messed up, I really do. Most every time I've ever messed up, the 2 times I've messed up, but most every time I've messed up, I haven't really meant to do what I did. I mean, does that make sense? It's not in my own mind, I'm like, no, I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean to say it that way. I didn't mean to act that way. I did. If you could just give me a chance. Why don't we do that for other people? For the community? I realize the only way we can do all of this, I mean, this, like I said earlier, I've yet to figure out a way to be in any relationship. I have a pretty good marriage. I'm pretty good with my kids most of the time, you know. I have some great friendships. But in all my relationships, there's some pain and there's some hurt. And I've caused some of it. And some of it's been caused to me. And I've yet to figure out, how do you live in a relationship that's pain-free? But the only way I can live in a way that begins to work on not causing more pain and more hurt. Remember, we talked about that. There's a sign out there that says, do no harm. The only way I can do this is when I begin to realize I make this choice because God first loved us. I mean, you think about it, we think the choice is this: attack or withdraw. Cause them pain or hurt by, or just say, I'm done with this relationship. Right. But there is a different choice. The real choice is to love, which invites pain and pleasure into our lives. But to do anything else would make us less than human. Now, I know next week, if you show back up next week, and I hope you do, Peter, right after Jesus talks about all this kind of stuff, Peter goes, well, and he's like, yes, Peter. How many times do I have to do this? 7 times? And Jesus goes, no. 70 times 7. And you can see Peter going, 1, 2, 3. And if you're still counting, we're getting it wrong. You keep doing it. And right now, let me be clear, I do think, and anytime I kind of talk about it this way, I want to put a disclaimer. Our job is not to let people keep hurting us. And sometimes people hear this message and say, yeah, but I mean, if somebody is physically hurting you, if you're being abused physically, verbally, and there are people that are so toxic that you need to remove yourself from that situation so you don't get hurt. And if you're in one of those situations, we want to help you out. Give me a call, talk to me, hey, and we'll get you out. We'll help with that. And there may be a few of us in the room with that. But a lot of us in the room, what I'm talking about today is more of, they hurt us, so we hurt them. They hurt us, so we hurt them. The abuse of power, the abuse and the anger that's coming out physically and verbally in ways that are so toxic, you are constantly under physical duress. We want to help with that, and we can. But for me in my relationships and with y'all and with my family and friends and coworkers and everything, I get hurt, so I want to hurt, and then it's in this way of love. This is grace. That God, if you think about the message of the gospel, that we're able to love because God first loved us. You know, the message of the gospel is God going, you have hurt me. If you don't believe that, read Genesis 3 where Adam and Eve eat the fruit. And God goes, where are you? Because we weren't where we were supposed to be. Who told you? Because we listened to voices we shouldn't. You almost feel God's heart break in that moment. And then God begins this process of going, look, I know that loving humanity is going to hurt, but I so love, I am willing for my son to come. And this is what love looks like. A willingness to come to us so that we can be made right with God. And when that happens, well, then we have a responsibility to go to our brothers and sisters. And when they have heard us, we look to make things right. The only way is it starts first with your relationship with Christ. That understanding that God loves you. Because on the night in which Jesus gave himself up for us, he took bread. Do you hear the language there? On the night in which Jesus gave himself up for us. On the night in which Jesus was willing to take on pain and hurt so we might know love. Took bread, gave thanks unto God, and broke it. And gave it to his disciples and said, take and eat. This is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. When the supper was over, he took a cup and gave thanks unto God. And he gave it to his disciples, and he said, drink from this, all of you. This is my blood, the blood of the new covenant that is poured out for you and for many. For what? The forgiveness of? For the forgiveness of all the wrongs we have done, for all the pain we have caused, for all the hurt we have brought, for the forgiveness of sins. This is my blood that is poured out for you and for many. Do this. And realize in that moment to do this. We think it's come up here and dip the bread and eat the cup. Dip the bread and the cup. I realize in that moment, do this is when we receive the grace that has been given to us, then we better go do this out there to those who have hurt us. Let's pray. God, I wish it was easy to follow you. I wish it was simple just to say, Jesus loved me and everything was made wonderful. And it is. But when I let your love into my life, then I have to love like you. And that's hard. And all of us in this room have some relationship we know. We've got playing in our heads. And honestly, God, it makes our stomachs a little queasy to think we have to go to them and begin to make things right. But as you have come to us to make things right, fill us with your love and your grace. Pour out your Holy Spirit on us gathered here on these gifts of the bread and the cup, and make them be for us the body and blood of Christ, that as we feast on them, we might be made right with you, that we may be made one with you. And in being made one with you, we may be made one with the community and one with each other and one in ministry to the whole world. And may we go forth from that moment with the courage to love the world like you have. We pray this prayer in the name of Jesus, who taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.